why did I subject you to that? One, I think to establish that yes, the internet is a disgusting place, and also that it does something to us, not just in terms of what I'm about to talk about in reference to Nicholas Carr's essay on the way that Google affects the way we think, but also in terms of kind of tying it together with this idea of the internet, not just Facebook, but the internet being this kind of heterotopic space wherein certain aspects of our society are represented and challenged, and so this is something I want this discussion to continue, and especially next week when we begin discussing Black Mirror and the episode 15 Million Merits, the way that the sort of the internet works, and even the pornographic content that's going to come back, and not to make you uncomfortable, but to really analyze what's happening there with sex and sexuality and pornography, and how that connects with technology, and namely with the internet, but it's not just so much the internet. I mean, we really kind of want to use this as a way of just analyzing, again, what does it mean to be human? That question is sort of always at the forefront of what we're discussing. So part of why a lot of instructors will discourage you from using Google, particularly to conduct research, has to do with sort of what Chappell illustrates in the way that the internet is designed. It's designed to advertise to us. It's designed to pump a bunch of crap into our line of sight and into our brains, and it's very hard to find good, substantial, relevant, credible content on the internet if you don't know what you're doing. And so in this lecture, I don't want to talk too much about that. I don't mind using Google. I don't mind if you use Google to do initial searches and things like that, but you need to think very critically about what you encounter when you just do a simple Google search. The thing about using library databases, or even using Google Scholar, is that it kind of filters all that crap out of your line of sight, so that what's coming to the fore are sources that have been well researched, documented, perhaps even peer reviewed, meaning specialists in the field have reviewed the writer's work and verified the research, so that you know what you're getting is credible. You can trust it. Even if it does have a bias of some kind, you know that the writer has thought very deeply and critically about the topic. And so you can cite that feeling pretty confident about the information. So in this lecture, I want to talk a little bit more about what's actually happening to our brains as we depend on this technology more and more. So we'll start, I would like for you to read Nicholas Carr's essay. It's an excerpt from his book, The Shallows, and that book explores the effects of the internet on the human mind, and the ways in which that Google specifically has changed the way we think. We're no longer reading in the traditional sense, therefore we're no longer thinking in the traditional sense. And Carr argues that the traditional way was a lot better for our brains. Okay, and he cites his own experience, noticing that over the past few years, I've had an uncomfortable sense that someone or something has been tinkering with my brain, remapping the neural circuitry, reprogramming the memory. My mind isn't going, so far as I can tell, but it's changing. I'm not thinking the way I used to. One of the things that I think is really interesting, because I have also had this experience being 37 years old. I remember when the internet was in its infancy, and I've seen its explosive evolution, and the evolution of the cell phone, that now we're all carrying these little computers around, and even my own sort of, not my desire to read, but my ability to kind of concentrate and read and commit to longer works. it's definitely been altered by the convenience of being able to skim instead. And I particularly enjoy Carr's metaphor in the way that he talks about the difference in his thoughts. That, you know, he makes this argument. His theory about what's happening to his brain depends on the idea that media, such as the internet, are not just passive channels of information. They supply the stuff of thought. Our technology supplies our thoughts. But they also shape the process of thought. So it supplies the stuff of thought and then the way in which we think about that stuff. He goes on to say, my mind now expects to take in information the way the net distributes it, in a swiftly moving stream of particles. Once I was a scuba diver in a sea of words. Now I zip along the surface like a guy on a jet ski. And I've already kind of made it clear that I think Carr does have a point. That texts on the internet are not really meant to be grappled with. And by this I mean that we are not really meant to spend time wrestling with the text for their deeper meaning. Typically there is no deeper meaning. What you see is what you get. And usually what you get is not very good. They're purposely shallow so that we can find the information quickly and move on. And we've grown accustomed to this type of skim reading that doesn't challenge us to think critically, which of course, as you can imagine, as a teacher and a thinker, I find this very problematic for the well-being of our society. But not to preach too much about that. I think that Google itself is not necessarily a bad thing. Google Books has made it possible for people to access texts for free. Google Scholar, as I stated earlier, is actually not a terrible resource if you're looking for information that has greater content. I think as a company, Google's sort of aware of the crappiness of content, and that as a search engine, you know, they're sort of trying to accommodate a variety of audiences. But I do think that people who have grown up with the internet and search engines like Google, if it's been around since you first started going to school, and if you've had a smartphone for the majority of your life, and you've had access to this stunning database of information that we just have at the touch of a finger, you're used to reading and thinking according to the rules of this media. And I know that for some students that has posed a challenge for them when they have to sort of commit to reading longer texts and more complicated texts that require them to sometimes reread and think critically and grapple, like I was saying earlier, with specific questions and meaning. So it's a time-consuming process, and we're obviously a very fast-paced society. I don't think we like it very much when things take time that we're not necessarily willing voluntarily to give them. I do, of course, take advantage of this form of technology, but I do think it's interesting to explore kind of how does it actually affect our brains. And I have posted on Blackboard. Here, I haven't actually technically posted it yet, but I have provided a video. It's just a short clip of Nicholas Carr kind of going more into depth and talking more broadly about the internet and the effects that it's having on us. And in addition to that, a clip that I thought was pretty interesting because it actually illustrates the brainwave patterns of thought and how thought used to be and how Google has actually impacted the way that we're thinking. And so it's in a more like literal scientific kind of sense that I think might appeal to some people more than the sort of abstract or metaphorical way in which Carr talks about it in his essay. But I wanted to raise this issue because I think it's, like I said, it's related to this idea of the heterotopic space. And I think we want to start layering on so that as the weeks go by, we're not forgetting what we talked about last week. We're using it now, and we should apply it to what we're talking about this week, and then so on and so forth with next week and beyond. And I do see that happening in the discussion forums. I'm very pleased with what's happening in the discussion forums, so please keep up that great work. And I'm looking forward this week to reading your drafts of your responses to Foucault's Facebook and the Social Network. Hopefully you've had a chance to watch the Social Network, and you've read the Heterotopia of Facebook. I've already, and some of you have picked up on it already, but I've posted the workshop space on our forum. So just get your draft up as soon as possible. I'll be checking the forum and reading posts and commenting, but do please keep in mind that if you wait until the 22nd, depending what time you post, I mean, if you're posting at 11:59 on June 22nd, I'm, and probably not your classmates either, will be able to respond to you and give you constructive feedback before you post on the 23rd. So please keep that in mind. I noticed that our forum, most people are kind of getting to it the Monday or Tuesday at the end of our weeks. And I don't mind, because the responses they're really good quality responses, I think, for the most part. But it does make a difference. The earlier you can get your stuff up there, the more we can have a discussion. But I'm not necessarily, interested in making you stick to hard, fast deadlines, because I do want these to be ongoing dialogues throughout the rest of the summer. Okay, so read the essay by Carr, the article by Carr. Is Google making us stupid? Oh, I knew I had something else I wanted to tell you. In the composition resources folder, I've added another folder, and keep in mind, you're not obligated to look at all of this stuff. The stuff I specifically point out in lectures, like getting familiar with particular logical fallacies, especially because logical fallacies do apply to that Vayner video resume that you've watched, and it has kind of come up in that dialogue, which I'm happy about. But check that out. And then also, this is just, I'm adding to this folder gradually. I'm really kind of a dork about this whole post-humanism stuff. I really love reading about it. And so as I find stuff that I think applies, I'm going to go ahead and put in this folder, and you're welcome to browse it. And remember, you can use 2 sources that I have provided for you, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something I assigned officially. If you find something in this folder that you like and you want to use it in your research paper, you are more than welcome to do that. And I will look forward to your discussion forum posts.